So in this video, I'm going to show you the process behind one of my favorite Viking-inspired paintings. I'm testing out some new acrylic markers while telling you some insane facts about Viking women. And trust me, these women were not messing around. Forget what you've heard about the guys with the axes. Today, it's all about the ladies who knew how to bring the chaos. So let's dive in. For this painting, I'm using my very trusted, never let me down Clairefontaine watercolor paper. Why? Because it's got this wonderfully matte surface that makes my brushstrokes look so crisp. It's like they were laser etched by a Viking blacksmith. The colors stay super bright, which is great because I'm really not into faded sad colors when I'm painting a fierce Viking woman ready to fight the world. Because she has more of a yellowish complexion, I went heavy on the yellow ochre. I'm basically channeling all my inner Viking sun goddess vibes here. This tone brings out all the warmth in her skin while making sure she still looks like she could crush you with one stare. You know, tough and glowy, because why not both? Let's talk about the eyes and lips. These are the real show stealers. I made the eyes a bright green because, well, what's more intimidating than eyes that could light up a room and terrify an entire Viking army? The lips, bold red, because nothing says I'm powerful but also still approachable, maybe, like a killer red lip. After that, I move in with color pencils and markers to really sharpen those details. The pencils help me fine-tune all the little bits, like making sure the lips are sharp enough to cut glass and adding texture where it counts. My color pencils are my secret weapon for locking in that vibrancy. And while I'm working on these fine details, let me tell you about one of the wildest Viking women in history, Freydis Eiríksdóttir. Freydis was the daughter of the famous Eric the Red, and she definitely inherited her father's temper. Plus, she had this knack for making everyone around her terrified. Here is the craziest part of her story. Freydis joined an exhibition to Vinland, present-day North America, with some Viking men. Things were going somewhat fine until one day they were ambushed by Native Americans. Now, most of the men did what you'd expect. They panicked and ran. But Freydis, not so much. She was heavily pregnant at that time, but that didn't stop her from grabbing a sword, ripping open her shirt and charging at the attackers, screaming like an absolute maniac. She was swinging the sword around, beating her bare chest with it. And you know what? It worked. The attackers were so freaked out that they turned and ran. So there you have it, Freydis, the Viking queen who fought off an entire army while pregnant. If that doesn't make you want to channel some Viking energy into your home, I don't know what will. Speaking of which, if you're as obsessed with this piece as I am, I've got some exciting news. I've just released limited edition embellished prints of this artwork, complete with stunning gold and glitter details. Because if Freydis can charge into battle wielding a sword, the least we can do is give her the royal treatment with some serious sparkle. These prints are already on my website, but for a super limited time, you can get the embellished version. It's like adding a touch of Valhalla to your walls. So until October the 20th, you can get one of these beauties. But that's not all. If you want to learn how I painted this piece from start to finish, you can dive into my step-by-step tutorial over on my Patreon page. This tutorial isn't just a quick overview, it's packed with details. You will get a full material list, the sketch template to print out and follow along with, and I've even broken it down into chapters for you, so you can easily track your progress. And the best part, when you sign up for my Patreon, you will get access to over 150 other videos covering a wide range of techniques and projects. So whether you're looking to sharpen your skills or just geek out over art and Vikings, which, let's be real, is the best combo, there is something for you. A link to my Patreon and my online shop is in the video description. So go check it out and join the fun. For the body, I went all in with yellow ochre, olive green and turquoise tones. Because, you know, Vikings were all about that earthy glow. Think fresh off the battlefield, but make it fashion. I added a bit of burnt sienna to give the skin that sun-kissed look, like she's ready to raid a village and steal the show. What I love about this process is how the colors just blend into each other so seamlessly, but still keeping those crisp edges that really define her figure. And here's the real magic, the matte paper. It's perfect because it lets me go back in with colored pencils and add all these fine details, especially the hatching around the fingers. Then of course there's the Viking tattoo, one of my favorite parts. I'm obsessed with how intricate and beautiful Viking tattoos can be. For this one, I stuck to color pencils using my trusty polychromos. Indigo blue is an absolute go-to when it comes to tattoos. It gives that bold but natural look without overpowering the rest of the body. The tattoo itself is a nod to traditional Norse designs, sharp, symbolic and beautiful. Alright, now that I'm refining the details of the Viking tattoo, let me tell you about Hervør, who, let's just say, didn't shy away from a good curse. Hervør was the daughter of a Viking berserker, and like most people in Viking sagas, her family history was soaked in blood and tragedy. Now, here's where things get interesting. Hervør hears that her father, Angantyr, was buried with this legendary cursed sword called Tyrfing. Sounds cool, right? Except there's one small problem. The sword comes with a death wish. According to legend, Tyrfing was cursed to kill someone every time it was drawn, and eventually it would lead to the downfall of whoever owned it. But, you know, minor details. So what does Hervør do? She marches straight into her father's burial mound, walks into the middle of a haunted battlefield where dead Vikings rise from the ground, and demands the sword from her father's ghost. Agantyr's spirit warns her again and again, saying, "Take this sword and it will destroy you and everyone around you." But of course, Hervør is like, "Yeah, I will take my chances, thanks." And surprise, surprise, once she gets Tyrfing, bad things start to happen. The curse immediately takes effect. First, the sword causes the death of her own family members. And one particularly horrifying moment is when Tyrfing was used in a battle where the rivers literally filled with the bodies of the slain. Hundreds of thousands of bodies piled up, choking the rivers with death. So yeah, the sword didn't mess around. Eventually it gets passed down to her descendants who use it in battle. And guess what? It continues to bring death and ruin to everyone who wields it. It's the kind of thing where you think, maybe we should not use the cursed sword. But no, it keeps getting passed down, wreaking havoc across generations. Hervør's determination to own this deadly sword shows you just how far Viking women would go to prove their strength. Because what's a little bloodshed and generational doom when you're trying to make a point, right? And speaking of things that make a big impact without all the drama of a cursed sword, a big thank you to today's video sponsor, Arrtx, who sent me these exciting acrylic markers. And today I'm going to test them and see if they can be useful for my own paintings. You know that I work with lots of mixed media, stuff like markers, color pencils, gouache, gel pens, everything really works. So I was super excited to try these out. Acrylic markers is something that I have so far only worked sporadically with, so this is going to be exciting. So let's open this up. Oh, this looks so good already. I love this. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, they are so cute. Okay, now I'm going to put them all on the table. I should have opened this a little bit more careful because this is actually very handy. But oh my gosh, this design is so freaking cute. Oh my gosh, I love them already. This is very much right up my alley. I have a knack for cute art supplies. So these are looking very cute already. I thought I'm going to do a few color swatches. And by the way, these markers have 50% more ink than the regular markers. The markers also feel super heavy. You can really feel that there's lots of ink in it and that they will last a long time. And they're supposed to not fade, which is really good. To use the acrylic markers, follow these easy steps. First, make sure to put the lid on and shake the marker well until the paint is evenly mixed. Next, open the cap and press the tip down until the ink starts flowing. Before starting your project, test the markers on a piece of paper to see if the color is right for you. Once everything looks good, you're ready to paint. Make sure to cap the pens before shaking them, otherwise the ink could spill. It doesn't happen to me here, but it's recommended to only shake them with the caps on. So keep that in mind. Okay, that is a very intense color, and I like that it really has exactly the color of the cap. I thought I will get like a very basic color set with like primary colors, and for many people like primary colors are great. But as a professional artist, like my paintings are not primary colored. I would say I have a bit more advanced needs, so to say. So I like that I have so many muted colors here. It's just so pretty. Purple tone is really pretty. So you just have to, once you do the pump, you don't have to do it afterwards, you just have to do it in the beginning.
The cool thing is that these markers are super versatile, so you can paint with them on metal, on stones, flower pots, canvas bags, and all kinds of other surfaces.
And I can think of lots of different uses for this. For example, I did a series of geisha paintings back then in the days, and I'm thinking of revisiting this at some point and painting the kimonos with all these different patterns on it. Or for my Gustav Klimt paintings, doing these patterns would be super useful. For example, we have gold here as well. So I can see this in Gustav Klimt inspired works as well, where you have lots of gold tones. Oh, and you see how nice they layer. This is really good. It's like a real acrylic paint. I think this one is silver. Okay, I think I'm going to test to paint one of my favorite paintings. I mean, not paint the whole painting, but some tests with Gustav Klimt's The Kiss. I just love this painting so much. Many people only know this part, but actually this painting is so much bigger. And Klimt painted this beautiful flower meadow beneath the two lovers. And I think these acrylic markers have the exact perfect color range to paint this. Because you have the gold, you have greens, you have purples, beautiful blues and reds as well. So I think I'm going to try doing something of this. By the way, there are 48 colors. It's a really good range of colors. I love Gustav Klimt's work. And also Claude Monet's artwork, that if you use them for study, you see that there's so many opportunities to practice abstract work that I really love doing them. And it's very freeing. Normally I'm very restricted with my paintings. They don't have much room for experimentation. These patterns are great for doing this. So this is actually a very beautiful color here.
Here you can actually see how vibrant and intense these colors are. They look almost identical compared to the image on my phone. And my phone is a screen, not a piece of paper. So that's very impressive.
Okay, this yellow tone is beautiful. It's so bright. So I can definitely see that I'm going to be using this in my paintings, especially in my watercolor and mixed media paintings. I could also use them in my acrylic and oil paintings, especially maybe if I just want to give it some hatching effects. Sometimes I just really love playing around and just make these wild, almost like childlike drawings, because it's so much fun. I wish painting would be like that. It would be so much easier.
Here you can see how well these markers are actually covering. When I'm painting the yellow dots on the purple flowers, you see they're 100% opaque. You don't have to add another layer. It's just one layer of markers. And they don't smut.
Is this a masterpiece? No. Was it fun? Yes. I'm going to try painting on metal here. As you can see, it adheres to the metal pretty well. It's really pretty. I mean, it's Klimt, obviously it will look good. If you maybe want to try these out, I can recommend them. They're really fun to work with, and especially if you want to try abstractions or just some patterns, they're really useful for that. Keep in mind the tip is a little bit bigger. They would work well for bigger paintings or just for more abstract work. The package also comes with tips that you can replace. They also work on canvas, and for everyone who wants to try it, I have a link in the video description with the discount code. Anyways, let's get back to the video.
For the helmet, I went for a mix of silver and bronze tones, because obviously nothing says authentic Viking like some good gold shiny metal. I wanted that metallic sheen to pop, so I masked off the highlight areas with masking fluid before filling in the rest with my metallic colors. Pro tip: when you're painting metal, the key is sharp edges. That's what gives it that I could slice through a battlefield kind of look. Once the base layer dried, I went back and intensified the highlights, because if this helmet doesn't glow like it's seen the light of Thor's hammer, what's even the point, right? Now, for the background, I did something I love to do. Borrow from Gustav Klimt, because the man knew his patterns. I took a small section of one of his paintings and blew it up, which I do a lot. The process is kind of a saga in itself. I spent forever rotating and resizing it in Photoshop
trying to find that one perfect spot that fits. It's like searching for the holy grail of background patterns. But when it works, it's magic. The patterns add that extra layer of visual depth and perfectly contrast the sharpness of the helmet, which, let's be honest, needs all the attention it can get. Now, I could talk all day about gold and metallic finishes, but the Vikings really knew how to work with precious metals. One of the most striking examples is the Hidden Sea treasure. Discovered in 1873, this casual little find includes 16 gold pendants, a brooch and a neck ring, all weighing a whopping 600 grams. I mean, who just leaves that lying around? But here's the fun part. The pendants feature a mix of Thor's hammer and Christian crosses. Like the Vikings couldn't decide between Norse mythology and Christianity. Old gods, new gods, let's wear both and see which one has our back. Now that's what I call versatile accessorizing. And speaking of versatile, here's a fun fact. Viking women didn't wear gold just for the aesthetic. They also wore special keys on their belts. These keys symbolized that they were in charge of the household, managing food, valuables and property. Essentially, if a Viking woman was wearing keys, she wasn't just unlocking doors, she was unlocking respect. Only the head of the household had the right to carry them. So when a woman wore them, it was like she was publicly flashing her independence and power. Forget handbags, keys were the original power accessory. Oh, and let's not forget the arm rings. These weren't your average bracelets. Some of them were oath rings, used in ceremonies to swear loyalty or seal deals. Imagine that at your next family gathering. And here's the best part. They were basically Viking credit cards. When coins weren't around, you could just hack off a piece of your arm ring for trade, giving birth to the term hex silver, multifunctional accessories at their finest. Fashion and function. Alright, now let's move on to the sword, which, let's be honest, is easily one of the most exciting parts to paint. I mean, who doesn't love a good gleaming Viking sword? The crispness of the lines here is everything if you want to really nail that sharp metallic look. Luckily, this paper makes it easy to get those super clean edges that make the sword look like it could slice through, well, pretty much anything. I'm using a lot of silver and gold tones to give the blade that rich, gleaming finish. There's just something so satisfying about seeing those colors blend perfectly. Still shiny, but with just enough contrast to make the whole thing pop. I have to let it dry before moving on to the next layer, because even a Viking sword needed time to reflect, pun intended. But you can already tell it's going to look like it's ready for a starring role in a legendary saga. Sharp lines, killer metallic finishes, it's all about making this blade look like it's fresh out of a Viking's hand. And speaking of swords, Viking women were no strangers to wielding them. There's a lot of debate about just how many women fought alongside men. But we do know of legendary shield maidens, women who picked up swords and fought with just as much skill and ferocity as the men. One particularly famous Viking woman was Lagertha, who, according to the sagas, fought so fearlessly in battle that she single-handedly turned the tide of a war. Described as having long, flowing hair and a deadly sword, Lagertha led her own troops into battle and wasn't afraid to face danger head-on. And while some historians argue that shield maidens might be more myth than reality, the fact that these stories exist tell us a lot about how the Vikings viewed women. As strong, capable, and often just as deadly as their male counterparts. So when you see this sword I'm painting, imagine a Viking woman standing tall, blade in hand, ready to defend her home. So for the hair, I went with black. Now, I'm not entirely sure how common black hair was among the Vikings. Most of them were likely blonde or red-haired, or rocking that light brown, windswept and battle-worn look. But honestly, the contrast between light skin and black hair just works, which is why I keep coming back to it. And let's not forget those bluish-green eyes. I mean, black hair paired with eyes that look like they could pierce right through a storm? Now we are talking. What I love about watercolors is how they give this soft, almost cloud-like texture when you paint larger areas. The way the black flows, it creates this dreamy, natural look, like the hair is gently catching the wind. Once the base is down, I grab a fine brush and go in for those tiny wispy strands around the edges. These little details add so much depth, making the hair look alive, like it's moving with a light breeze. It's the kind of extra touch that makes you think, is she about to conquer a kingdom or just having a great hair day? Either way, it adds that lifelike movement that really pulls the whole piece together. Now we are in the final stretch, and as you can see, everything is really starting to come together. Finally! First up, I go in with colored pencil to add those final little details. This is where the magic happens, enhancing the edges of the armor, adding a bit more depth to the highlights in the hair. Next, I bring out the oil pastels to create a rough, vintage-like texture, which gives the whole painting a slightly worn, timeless feel, almost like it's been through a few Viking raids itself. The oil pastels add just enough grit to contrast with the smooth, shiny metallic elements. You know, like adding a little dirt to a shiny new sword, just to make it look more legit. One of my favorite parts, gold gouache paint. I work it into the background pattern, making that Gustav Klimt-inspired design pop even more against the darker tones. It adds this beautiful shimmer, making the whole piece feel like a little extra special. And speaking of special, I add a thick white outline around the sword, because if this sword doesn't demand attention, we're doing something wrong. Finally, I use a plexiglass piece to carefully draw those sharp lines on the sword, making sure it has those perfectly defined edges that just scream, "I'm sharp, don't mess with me." And that's it, boom, the painting is done. Now I've decided to call this piece Heimskringla. It's a nod to the famous Heimskringla, a collection of sagas about Norwegian kings. But in this case, she's not based on any specific historical figure or story, because, well, she is the story. She embodies all those fierce, powerful women who shaped Viking history, whether they were queens, warriors, or the quiet forces behind the scenes. She is the spirit of Viking womanhood, wrapped up in one fierce, mysterious package. And with that, we've reached the end of the Viking saga, or as the Vikings would say, farewell, which in modern terms means goodbye. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out the links below for all the extra goodies.